Okay, well,
Uh,
I guess I will start with just a simple introduction. I recognize some of your faces, so some of you have heard my story before. Um, I came to book arts from graphic design. In college, I studied graphic design with an emphasis on illustration. And when I moved to Boulder, Colorado, I sort of fell into this mecca of magazine publishing, and I became a print magazine and book specialist. And that was all the work that I did for the last 30 years was all in print production and multi-page documents. And early on in my career, as I was sitting at the computer and preparing my files for print projects to go to the press, I felt like I was making books, but I wasn't actually making them. What I was actually doing was sitting at my computer and clicking the mouse. And so I wanted to have a more tactile experience with the projects that I was making. I wanted to use my hands. I wanted to smell the leather and feel the paper and have a direct interaction with the object instead of, my experience as a designer was you send your final files to the printer and then 6 weeks later the truck shows up with the books that you made. But you didn't make them, but you did make them. But I wanted to be more involved. So that led me to my first bookbinding class here in Boulder. And as soon as I had my very first class, I knew straight away, like, oh, this is it. This is what I want to dive deep into. And I took every class I could find until that landed me at the American Academy of Bookbinding. I showed up at the American Academy of Bookbinding with, my oldest baby son in arms, and um, I knew that that program was going to take some deep diving, full attention from me. And I studied for a little bit, and then I took a break to raise my family. And then I made it back to the AAB in, I think, 2014 was when I ended up back there. And from then on, I worked to work through that whole diploma program. I graduated from the fine binding side of the American Academy of Bookbinding programs. There are two sides, one that's more conservation geared and one that's fine binding geared. And I graduated from the fine binding side in 2023. And so now I still do graphic design freelance, and I've been doing a lot of catalogs for fine binding shows or bookbinding shows. It seems to be a natural combination of my skills of being a designer and understanding how to put together a multi-page document and understanding what those print projects are supposed to do for the binders involved in those bookbinding shows. So I've been doing a lot of those. And I also have been taking on a lot more teaching, which I really enjoy. I sit on the board of the Book Arts League here in Boulder, and I teach monthly all kinds of classes through the Book Arts League. Most of that stuff is beginner classes, and I also teach introductory letterpress classes at the Book Arts League. I teach level one introduction to bookbinding at the American Academy of Bookbinding. I do that 2 or 3 different times a year. And I also teach at the Focus on the Book Arts, like Celine mentioned. And I do that every other year when they'll have me. And I'm always looking for other opportunities to teach. I've been invited to teach at um, a new experience at Montana University that they're putting together, and details are still developing. So very excited about those things too. Today, I'd like to share with you my most recent binding that I did for the Guild of Bookworkers. They have a triennial show, and they give us a theme every time. This past theme, the show is just coming down for the final time, and the books have just been sent back to the binders. The theme was Night Circus. And I don't know if any of you have read that book by Erin Morgenstern. I love her. I love that Night Circus book, and I also loved her Starless Sea of Stars. Anyway, it's another one of her titles that I really loved. It had a secret underground library. Anyway, I love her work, and I wanted, as soon as I heard the prompt for the show, I thought, oh, I know exactly what kind of book I want to make. And I started trying to find a book to bind. I was working a little bit in reverse order. I think the way that most binders work and the way that you're intended to work is that you have a book that you want to bind and you use your skills to make the binding and the cover, and your work serves as an introduction to the book that you're trying to work for. And so your work might include elements of the visual illustrations or whatever is inside of the content of the book, whether the way it's laid out has a specific look that you want to bring into the cover, or the meaning of the book, you want to bring that onto the cover. But usually it's, as a binder, you're responding to the content of the pages and then creating a design that communicates the interior of the book. It serves as an introduction. I got the cart, the horse ahead of the, no, the cart ahead of the course. You know what I mean, you guys. The cart ahead of the horse. All right. So I was already envisioning what I wanted to make, and I couldn't find a book that would fit my idea. I bought a lot of circus books, and when they arrived, or when I was shopping for them, they all were not the kind of book that I wanted to make. They were all a little bit too happy and showing the fun, happy side of a circus, a little bit too much for children. When I heard the term Night Circus, I really wanted my book to have sort of a darker, seedier side, where it was the kind of circus that you only go to at night, or a little bit of a mystical circus, of one that only shows up after twilight falls. And so I wanted something a little bit darker and seedier, and I could not find that book. So I started to imagine what would be the perfect book that my design that I'm dreaming of would fit with. And as I started imagining the book, I realized that book doesn't exist, and I probably should make it. And this little voice in my head was saying, you don't have time for that. You don't have time for that. You don't have time for that, because these projects have a deadline, and a fine binding does take time. And I have had situations in the past where I get really involved in the art making on the interior of the book, and I run out of time for the fine binding. And I didn't want that to happen. I wanted to focus on the binding for this prompt, for this challenge, for the Guild of Bookworkers. And the more I resisted the idea, the more insistent the idea became, until I thought, well, you're just wasting time resisting the impulse. So sooner you get started, the better. And so I created a series of etchings for the inside of my book. I made a slideshow for you so that I can show you all the pictures of the inside of my book. So I'm going to share my screen and pull up. Okay, Celine, you're going to have to tell me if it's working.
Yes, we've got it.
All right, great. Okay, so I'm going to put this full screen so you guys don't have to see my thumbnails. There we go. This is my book for the Night Circus. A lot of my work, I incorporate letter forms into the design of my pieces. And that's a thing that I love to do. It's just, it comes from a love of letters and a love of letter forms. And that comes from being a graphic designer. So I love to do that. And I have done that here. Okay, so where did I begin? I began with researching. I wanted to give sort of like more of a carnival feel and less of a happy circus. I wanted it to be a little bit darker and seedier. So I did some deep dive into what do historic what do historic circuses or carnivals look like? What photographs are there from that era of time when there were traveling carnivals that came around from town to town and put up posters that were like, the carnival's coming tomorrow, and then it would just show up in a field behind your house. or behind the farm, So this is the kind of thing that I was looking at, all of these photos. And I made a collection. And then as I was trying to decide what kind of artwork I wanted to make, I wanted the pictures that I was going to create from these sources to be a little bit more um, cropped, a little bit more of it's just an idea, kind of to give you that peep show feel where you don't get to see the whole picture. You don't get to see the whole dog standing on his hind legs, but from one little piece of the picture, you get to guess that that's what's happening. And I didn't want to see the whole girl with the zebra, just maybe a hint that this is a tattooed lady with a zebra, just to give you sort of snapshots and a flavor of this kind of night circus that I was trying to create with my work. So I decided to do dry point etching on acrylic plates. And dry point etching, you can do it on a lot of different surfaces. I really didn't want to mess with metal. And it just, there's other people that do use other substrates for dry point etching, but I decided I wanted to do acrylic plates. And there is a company in my backyard called the Colorado Plastics, and they make all kinds of industrial plastic projects. So if you go to a bank or to the reception area of a doctor's office, and there are those plastic barriers between the customers and the people working behind the desk where you slip your cards through the window. They make those types of things and hundreds of other things. But often when they make those projects, they have offcuts that go into a recycling bin or a free bin, or they have stacks of smaller cuts of plastic. And one Friday out of every month, they have sort of a sale day where you can come and dig through the free bin. I found a big long piece that was an offcut of some 1/4 inch acrylic plastic, and I took it inside and I asked them to cut these into these little, they're about 2 by 3 inches, these plates. And they made me a whole stack of them, and then I came home and got started. You can see in this first picture that my circus words, I'm etching that with a needle tool. I had a couple different tools, but this is the one I liked the most. And as you scratch into the acrylic, you make a groove where the ink falls into the groove. And where there is a scratch, the ink will print, and where there is no scratch, it won't. And that is also how you apply the ink that makes that happen. So this middle photo shows you another bit, a close-up of the cross hatching. And then this last one on the right is the entire box of 30 plates that I made for this project. This is, excuse me, my print setup. And so for each plate, you need to add ink to the plate. Usually I would start out with a little tiny chips of cardstock, and you can scrape the ink onto the plate in different directions. In this first picture up here at the top, it kind of looks like a messy cigar or something in the bottom corner here, but what that is a roll of felt, and it has a way of picking up the ink and dabbing the ink into those little scratches and grooves. And after you get the whole plate covered with ink in all of the little crevices, there's a special fabric called Akua, and it's a polyester. It's a really soft, non-absorbent fabric made of polyester. And some people call it a scrim, but you crunch it into a ball and it helps you wipe off the plate so that the places that on the plate that don't have scratches don't print, and the places with the scratches do keep ink down in the grooves and will print. And there's a little bit of a trick right there, because if you're too exciting with your scrubbing, if you're too enthusiastic, you can remove all of the ink and the print won't turn out very well. So there's this sort of happy medium that comes with trial and error where you figure out, I want ink to be on the plate, but not on the whole plate. And then this is just showing you I have a very simple jig for keeping the block in place while I apply pressure. And the little pieces of printing paper were soaked with water so that they would print. And then here on the far right, you can see my little press. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about my press. I got this press on Craigslist for $100 several years ago. And when I got it, I was just really excited to have it. I wasn't even sure what kind of work I might do on it, but it's not a very sophisticated press, as I've learned a lot more about printing. Many modern presses have, what do you call them? There's a there's a gauge on the on both sides of the barrel where you can raise and lower the barrel and increase or decrease the amount of pressure that the barrel applies to the press board. And so you can squeeze your plate really, really hard or not so hard, depending on what your plate needs in the way of pressure. And there is no sort of sophistication like that in my press. It is locked into this channel with these metal grooves, and the only way to increase pressure is to increase the amount of felts or scraps that go on top of the plate. And so I tried at first, I tried to print more than one of these plates at a time, and it just wasn't possible with my press. So I wanted to make an edition of 3 for this book. So I had to get 3 good prints of every single plate, and I printed them one at a time. So it was very time consuming, and I might have printed most of them, half a dozen times before I got 3 good ones that I really liked. So this is me pasting, I have all of these cropped down, and I have them all lined up on some adhesive so that I can apply these prints to be mounted to the pages of my book. Celine suggested that you guys might want to see the prints a little closer up. So I took some pictures of my etchings so that you can see them all. And I have 3 sets. The first set was made into this book that I'm showing you tonight. And the other 2 sets, I haven't made those into books yet, but I will. And I have already promised one of these books to my mom. So I'm definitely going to make those books. So we've got all kinds of facets of the circus: animal acts, the ring of fire, the bear riding a bicycle, human acts like strongman or the bicycle or the unicycle, and the trapeze artists, and then animal wagons. Here's our zebra girl. I love that one. And then, of course, candy and snacks. And if the plates have any type on them at all, you have to carve the words in reverse so that the prints come out right reading. And then you got your 2-headed girl there too. There was a lot in the historical research of many human acts that were more like that. And I just decided I wanted to kind of hint at that, but I didn't want a whole lot of images like that in my book. I wanted it to be dark, but not sad. Okay, so now we're on to, I'm going to design the cover of this book now. So when I design books, I always start with thumbnail sketches, and they start out really small, literally only the size of my thumb. And then after I start to kind of like where they're going, I'll make them a little bit bigger. And I put these 2 pictures on the left side to show you what are the elements of the circus that I was trying to incorporate into my designs. So this lower etching here, this is just a small cropped portion of a historic 1920s circus costume, and it had polka dots and stripes and diamonds and triangles, and those patterns are repeated in a lot of the historic pictures of the carnival. And so I wanted to incorporate those ideas into the design. So I like the look of the overlapping tents, the peaks of the tents and the stripes coming down. So I started with these swoops of tent shapes, and then they started to sort of take on these wheel looks in my sketches. And then I was trying to find a way to incorporate the letters into my design as I like to do. And then at the bottom of this page, you can see I'm starting to settle into the design that I really liked. I've got my my tent swoops have started to look like wheels now, but I still really like that. There's a lot of circles and spinning wheels and all kinds of circus stuff. And then fitting my words in amongst my design. And now I'm ready to bring that sketch up to full size. So this full size sketch is done after the book is already bound. So, because I need to know the exact size of the covers and the exact width of the spine in order to get exact placement of the elements of my design. So this sketch happens after the book is bound, the full size sketch. And I use this tracing paper template to help me place these items as I'm making the cover design. I also just wanted to show you, to get these larger circles, I used a plate from my kitchen to give me the size circle that I needed for this design. Okay, so I'm not sure how much you guys know about the meeting guard or sewing on stubs. There are many reasons why a binder might choose to bind a book on stubs. The reasons are mostly if your pages of your book are of inflexible material where the pages won't bend in a way that allows the book to open naturally. If you bind it like a typical binding and the pages are really stiff, or if they're really tall and narrow, you try to open the book and the binding is going to fight you. And so someone in history, it is not known who, but Bernard Middleton is the first guy to ever write about it in bookbinding textbooks from 1930, in the 1930s. And the other reasons you might do this is if your pages are the grain direction going the wrong way. So if you have stiff pages or pages that won't bend, then this is a good idea, because the stubs allow the pages to open entirely flat and the binding takes place on the stubs and not on the pages of the book. Another reason why you might do this is if the pages have inconsistent thickness and you want to accommodate for that in the spine of the book, which was the reason why I did it. So each folio, each folded sheet of my book had two mounted etchings mounted in the center of the page. The pages are all navy blue because I was going for this twilight night sky feel for this book. And if you noticed on the print page where I was showing you how I printed all the plates are still looking a little blue, and that's because when I printed these, I mixed blue and black ink. So they're not entirely black. They're more of that twilight look in the prints themselves. So two prints mounted on each folio means that the center of those pages is going to be considerably thicker in the middle than they are out at the edges. And so at the spine, if I were to bind that book just with the thickness of those papers at the spine, it would be so much thinner than the thickness that it is in the center where all the etchings are mounted. So to accommodate that, sewing it on stubs, and the folded stub is the same thickness as the center of the folio, which is two folds of the paper, the blue paper, and two mounted etchings. In this center photo, I wanted you to see, I've got some green cardstock that I cut windows out of, and I temporarily just tacked these lightly onto the pages of my book with removable adhesive dots. And I did that so that if and when I needed to press this book in the book press, that I wasn't going to be damaging the blue pages at all, because I didn't want the difference in the thickness to affect the pressing. I wanted it to have even pressing where the pages don't get damaged. So I made these little windows for every single page to accommodate the thickness of the mounted etchings. The pages get bound to the stubs, and then you do the binding of the book on the other side of the stubs. So this picture on the right is my book. It's mounted in my plow, and I'm about to plow the top edge. And you can see the rounding and backing of the stubs. Okay, then for the cover design, the first step for me is hand dyeing the leather. The leather that I used for this book, it started out as this sort of robin's egg blue you can see in the lower part of the middle picture. And the look that I was going for was I wanted it, I don't know if you have seen that movie called Something Wicked This Way Comes, where there's this sort of like boiling night sky and these dark, ominous clouds are rolling in. And I wanted that feeling in the leather. And the leather gets darker when it's wetter. So it can look like, oh, this is perfect. And then when it dries, that effect is not quite so grand. So I did do several rounds of dyeing on this, and I wanted it to look like this moving, dark, impending sky of twilight, a dark night. And that's what I was going for. I used Hewitt aniline dyes from Hewitt Leathers. Okay, and then the next step, I wanted these onlays to be level. I wanted them to be level with the surface of the leather. I didn't want them to be sticking up like a puffy sticker on top of the leather. I wanted them to sink in. And these are called back paired onlays. So for the black triangles, I paired these onlays really thin, and then I have cardboard templates here to guide my placement of those on the piece of leather. This piece of leather is hand dyed and it's cut now to the exact size I need to cover my book. And I place all of these onlays where I want them to be in my circle design. And for these red polka dots, you can't, I use this little craft punch to cut those out. You can't really use those craft punches on leather. It's too flexible. So in order to make my punch work, I took my scraps of leather and I used several different colors of red because again, I wanted that sort of worn, like, oh, this costume has been worn 1,000 times in 1,000 towns. I wanted it to look, I wanted it to have that seedy imperfection. And so I took paste and I adhered a very thin piece of Japanese tissue to the front side of this leather with paste, which is removable. And then that gave my pieces of red leather a temporary stiffness that allowed the craft punch to work. So then once I had all my polka dots poked out, punched out, I was ready to apply them to my leather, and I used my full-size template to help guide me that those were going to go in the right spots that I had planned on my design. I glued these down to the front side of my book covering leather, and then after those are all dried, I used a little bit of water and a crepe eraser to pull that pasted Japanese tissue off. Okay, and then after this is all dry, there's a little bit of a pressing that happens to press the onlays into the surface of the covering leather. And then here's step 3 up at the top of this slide. You flip the leather over into the skin side, the flesh side is what I meant to say. And with my paring knife, I pared down the fleshy side, the suede side, so that the onlays will sink in level to the rest of the leather. I didn't want them to protrude for this look. Okay, and this picture at the top of this slide, this is what my book looked like right after covering. So you can see that the leather is still wet from covering the whole book. And the only pieces that I have on the design so far are the polka dots, the black triangles, and the red dot to this letter I. Those were the only things that were on it. And then after the entire thing was dry, I started the next step of the design techniques, which is debossing with washers. I did this first. So this book is entirely dry, and in my pressing situation, I open up the book so that it isolates just the cover that I'm working on one at a time. And you can see on the left side of this first photo here on the bottom row that I'm using my full-size template to help me place these items where I had them planned in my original design. And I wet the leather underneath the washer so that it gains its flexibility and pliancy again, not the whole cover, but just the place where I'm going to put that washer. And then I place the washer on the leather, cover that with a second acrylic board on top, and then I press the whole thing in my book press, and it debosses, it squishes that object down into the leather. And on this middle photo, you can see what it looks like with a deboss done from the washer. So step 5 was debossing with shapes and wire. These are techniques that I use on a lot of my bindings. I like to use copper wire to help me form the curvy parts of letters or other design elements. And you can see I'm forming the G, and then these little green triangles that you see in this middle photo, those are pieces of bookboard laminated with a piece of mylar on the back. And you can use those to deboss into the leather in the same way as a physical object like a washer. And when you apply pressure onto wet leather, it debosses, and you can see the downstem of this I. I have already completed the I before I started the G with the copper wire and the downstroke of this T with another piece of board laminated with mylar. So pressing those into the leather, I just work my design elements one at a time. I find that the copper wire can be challenging if you try to do more than one thing at a time, because they want to roll away from you or wiggle around when you go to apply the acrylic board on top. And for if you're making a letter G, it's really important that they don't move very much. So it's good to do them one at a time. So after I did step 5, debossing with shapes and wire, then step 6 is tooling. That's this final picture here on the right. The remaining parts of the letter, all of these letters, the downstrokes of the H, actually most of that H and all of this N and this round line of the circle, these are all done with tooling. And what I mean by tooling is you can just sort of see the the wood handles of these tools up here in the top of this right-hand photo. And those are tools. I have pellets and gouges. It means flat lines and curved lines. And these are brass tools that you lay on a stove. You make them hot, and then you can deboss into the leather, press down into the leather to make lines. It's called blind tooling. And so I had plans for these letters to write out the word night, and half of it I did with shapes and wire. Half of it I did with tooling, and then the dot of the I, of course, is one of my one of the shapes that I put on there before covering the book. So that was a back paired onlay. These are some pictures of the finished book. So of course I have taken out those green cardstock windows that were just helping me support the mounted etchings during any pressing that I might have done making this book. And now you've just got the support of the stubs binding. You can see in the bottom photo the way it opens entirely flat. And the spine then is the correct thickness to support a book with mounted artwork in the center of the pages so that it's completely flat when it's closed. It doesn't make a pizza shape or a wedge shape. It doesn't, the covers are even with the pages inside. And then these are some more pictures of the detailing. One of my favorite parts about this binding is that I used the stripes, the black and white stripes, for edge to edge doublures, which is the paper that goes on the inside front cover and the inside back cover. Usually a paste down there. The leather comes over the edge of the board, and then there's a paste down that is inside, and usually those paste downs are no larger than the text block. So when the book is closed, you only see leather at the edge. And that's the usual way. But if you use edge to edge doublures, you can do them with paper or leather or cork or whatever material you're working with, stone veneer. And then if you go all the way to the edge of the board, a little sliver of that material will show when the book is closed. And one of my favorite parts about this binding is how those stripes show up when the book is closed right at the edge. I like bringing that striped circus tent theme onto the edge of the binding. The headband is the end band. It's solid red, and that's a hand sewn end band. And I've got polka dot fly leaves. And oh, I guess I did some more tooling with dots as well. I have some blind tooling polka dots also mixed into this. So that is my Night Circus binding. So I'll stop sharing now and hand it back over to Celine.
Well, I have some questions that I would like to ask about the book. And I'm curious why you choose to build the letters on the cover instead of using a more traditional bookbinding tool.
Um, it just
Like
comes from,
the lettering. You know what I mean by the. I, I don't know
yes.
what they're called. Sorry.
Yes, they're called handle letters, and I do have them. But I just like to be more expressive with my lettering. And I think it comes from being a graphic designer and having a love of letter forms that it's a thing I do in my work a lot, where I'm building the letters. I'm building the letters of the titling with decorative techniques rather than using those tools. I feel a little constricted by the tools. Um, they're all the same size and the same weight, and it's hard to get it perfect. And then if you work that hard and you get it perfect, sometimes it looks like maybe you did it with a machine or a quick print instead of your hands, just because you're just that good, you know. And
Mhm.
um, I enjoy building those letters with shapes and making it a part of my design.
Now, why did you choose to tool some of them and deboss some of them?
I like to mix the techniques together.
Oh, so
Um,
it looks kind of the same in the photos, but when you're looking at it in person, it looks different in the leather.
I can show it to you. I have the book here, but as far as, do you mean different? Do you mean the different
Well,
levels
like
of the deboss?
the C or I guess it was a G. The
Mm-hmm.
G you did with wire, but then you tooled the H, and it seems
Yep,
like those strips of the H you could have done with wire,
I could have.
also.
I like the variation in line so that the copper wire is a little thicker than my tools, and I kind of
Oh,
like
okay.
that, but also it's easier to do straight lines with palettes, and then it's easier for me to do the curved lines with wire. I like the variation in the line width, but yeah, I mean a really skilled blind tooling binder could do that curve with tools. And the larger curve of my design where the black triangles are all lined up, I
Hmm.
did do that with curved tools.
Right. I saw when you mentioned that, and I was like, well, if you tooled that, why didn't you tool everything? But it's just hard to do those small letters in tooling.
No, I just like to mix it up.
Oh, artist
I just like
choice.
to mix. Yep. So I'm going to look over the side and see if I can't get a little more light on this.
I
Um,
do like how the letters are different. I mean that some are the long strips of lines and then some are the debossed, like the C is thick in one place and thin in the other, and then the I is
yeah,
all the multiple lines together. So and
yeah.
that S has a really cool shape. That's really cool.
S's are tricky. Yeah.
Now talk a little bit about this thing where the title of the books actually starts on the back cover. So you can't really
Yes,
appreciate it unless it's open all the way.
that's true. Okay, so as a designer, one of the things that um, is important to me is that you can read the book, the titling from the front. And I've done books where the title of the book is on the front and maybe the author's name is on the back. It's important not to split a word so that if the
Hmm.
book is closed, you're only seeing half the word on the front cover. That's the thing I object to. But I felt like the Night Circus, it was okay that it says circus on the front, and then when you open it, it says night, what kind of
It's
circus?
modified.
Yeah, especially because the content was mine. I didn't feel like I had to necessarily have the USBN approved registered title on the whole cover. I think I would have treated it a little differently if this had been a published book and not my own work, but
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I could take some, make it a little different because it's mine.
Right, right. No, very cool. Especially because it does open flat. Then you can
Yes,
really look at the whole thing. Now, how do you mount the folios to the stubs? Are those sewn on?
they are sewn.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
So the stubs are folded and they're sewn into the folds of the folios.
So show me
And
that before the page before that, in between two folios.
they all look the same.
Oh, so you
There's
can't
a
see the stub from the inside of the book?
no.
Oh, just on the end. Looks great. I love the stripes on the, carrying the stripes through on the stubs as well as the papers on the ends.
Oh, look, I'm looking through there.
Yeah.
And then I did a little quick printing for the final page. So it says in gold foil stamping, etchings by Brenda Gallagher and hand binding also by the artist.
Just a little bit of colophoning.
Yeah, I don't know if it does it look blurry to you or can you see it?
Well, sometimes it looks blurry and sometimes it gets clear. I'm sure it's just the light
Okay.
and then the screen.
Okay.
Now, what kind
So,
of paper did you print on?
um,
Like
I think
Reeves
it's
BFK
I
print
think it's
paper?
Reeves BFK. It's a
Mhm.
printmaking paper that I bought.
And when you said you wet it, did you really wet it or did you damp it or?
I did. I, there was a lot of trial and error, and I tried to just mist it, and then I tried to just damp it with a sponge, and I got better printing results when I actually submerged the I had a lasagna pan filled with water, and I had my pages cut to the size, and I just sunk them in the water in the pan for about, 5 or 7 minutes before printing.
Oh, so they were pretty wet.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
And but then the ink liked that or the press liked that, I guess.
yeah.
And then what about the end papers? Did you paint those or is that a
No.
commercial paper that you found?
It's a commercial paper that I found.
Oh, I like the mix of the dots and the stripes, and it really picked up from both the cover and then the pictures on the inside.
I do like to paint my own pages for the fly leaves and the paste downs, but for um, this one I wanted it to be more even, and I
Mhm.
chose that. I used that same paper on the box for this book too.
And then
And
what's
this
the
is
box covered in?
It's covered in black cloth, and that this is
Oh,
red leather on the spine piece.
oh, wow.
And then it says Night Circus on the label in the same
Neat.
blue as the pages.
Well, the box is almost as beautiful as the book.
Oh, thank you.
All right, is and I there were so many I just the whole idea of doing, oh, here's some, Jacob wanted to know the adhesive you want used on mounting the prints.
I used an adhesive that comes in a roll. It's called Goody. And I learned to use this material from Don Glaser, who teaches at the American Academy of Bookbinding. I have used a lot of glues, and there are some applications where I think Goody is perfect. It's sort of, it comes in a roll and it has paper on one side. So you saw that photo where I had all of the etchings cut to size and I had them all laid out on a sheet. And that was because as you unroll it, you're revealing the sticky side. So I stuck all of the etchings down and then cut them all apart. And then you peel off the paper backing. So it has,
It's a
it's a
little bit
double,
like double-sided tape. I mean,
yes.
in function.
Right, but double-sided tape has a thickness. It has that plastic carrier,
Mm-hmm.
and then
Mm-hmm.
there's adhesive on both sides of it, whereas Goody is
Just the glue.
just the adhesive. Yes. And
Wow.
so
Never
it's
heard of
very
that.
thin and it's pretty strong. I mean, if you went into my book and tried to pry those off, I'm sure you could, but I think for some applications, it's the perfect adhesive, especially for something dry like that. I think dry mounting with a heat activated adhesive would have also been a good idea.
You don't think that would have affected the prints?
I don't think so. And I mean, I think I would have used a barrier between the prints
Oh,
and the
right,
tacking
right.
iron. But yeah, I think that's another way to dry mount that is pretty known
Did
and
you
used.
trim the prints after you printed them?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Um, because you saw my press setup. So I tried to put the square of paper right over the square of the printing plate, and there was a lot of movement.
Mm-hmm.
Just, my press is a little janky. So, yeah, so I needed to trim them to be exact.
Right. Well, I was thinking, and then especially when it's wet, it might stretch a little in different directions.
Right.
And so what turned you on to the seedier part of the circus? Was that, do you have memories of that, or were you hearkening back to the book? Because in Aaron Morgenstern's book, it is very much a nighttime adult circus
Yep.
too.
I was thinking about Aaron Morgenstern and also Something Wicked This Way Comes. And I don't
Mm.
know if anybody watched that HBO series that was called Carnival. But all of those things, all of the darker side. Or did you ever see The Paper Moon with Ryan O'Neal and his daughter Tatum? It was
Mm-hmm.
kind of about a seedy 1930s traveling circus. And all of that, just like the historical knowledge of all the seedy circus stories. I kind of liked that more than I think that circuses historically were not happy, child-friendly spaces. And I didn't want to make a happy child-friendly book.
That's cool. It's nice to, well, and it's just, it's very cool because I like the idea of of a non, it's dark colors, although there is some pops of red, but and then the muted color of the ink, it just all goes together so nicely. It really, really complements it and tells the story before you're even looking at the pictures of, introducing the, the aura or the vibe of the book. So I'm glad you stuck to your guns. I really liked what you said about you were wasting time resisting your impulse.
I
'Cause-
know. And I think that comes from, being a student at the AAB. I wanted to do a lot of like, well, I'm going to just make my book. And um, going through that program, it was really important for me to just focus on becoming a better binder and focus on the binding and making designs that represent the interior of a book is a project that I'm well familiar with from a graphic design space where you design covers for a magazine or covers for a book, and those covers have to communicate something to the audience. And that is a project that I'm familiar with. But now that I've graduated from the program, what I'm finding is that this is the kind of work that I'm being drawn to do. I want to create my own interior books. I was told my own interiors of my bindings. I was told by Lang, a friend of mine, that these types of books where the binder creates the pages too is called the whole book. And I'm trying to get my light back on. There we go. Um, I wasn't aware that there was a distinction, but apparently most bindings are they are a concert of artistic forces. So there's the original voice of the person who wrote the text or whatever's inside that book, and then comes along the voice of the illustrator who created illustrations, if there are illustrations included in that text. And then there's also the element of how was the book designed? What does the layout say in the way that this information is presented to the reader? And then all of those voices in concert, the binder needs to create a design that serves as an introduction to those three voices, and your voice as the binder should complement what's already going on the inside of the book, and it can't overshadow the artistry that's already on display in the book. They should complement each other. Um, but, taking liberties with the titling, I felt like I could do that because this was a book that I made. And those are the kind of things that I enjoy, is making it from start to finish and being able to say, well, the illustrator of this book won't mind because that's me.
Yeah, there's no one to complain except to
Yes.
yourself. It's like, oh,
Yes.
what was I
It's,
thinking here?
I know it's a nice indulgence every now and then. It is very time consuming though. So I like to do traditional binding in between.
Great. Well, I'm going to see, does anybody else have any questions? I've been kind of hogging all the questions here, so I better see can shout it out or put it back on. All right. Well, I think we will call that an evening then. I really appreciate you taking the time to show us your book and go into all the detail of making it in addition to what you thought about it and how you got there. That was very, very interesting and lots of compliments from people about how much they enjoyed it. So I wrote down several questions as we were going through. Oh, it was like on the inlays for the leather, and I was going to say, and how did you get it to? And then you explained it in the next three sentences. So that's a good presentation when you anticipate the questions in your talk. So I appreciate that.
Um, Somebody in the chat here would like to know what my irons are.
Oh,
Um,
okay. I missed that.
those those irons back there are just they're antiques. I shop in antique shops sometimes, and if I see them, I pick them up. They're just a really easy way to have a weight, a heavy weight. And so you can put some pressure on your book without putting it in the book press. It doesn't need that much weight, but a little weight. I can put it between two boards and just put one of those irons on. And they're antiques and sometimes they're beautiful. So I do like to collect them. And when I'm teaching level 1 up at the American Academy of Bookbinding, I recommend to my students who are looking for ways to press books and they might not have um, any type of equipment like a book press, that collecting irons like that, or um, you can always start with wrapping bricks, which a lot of people start with. I even have, wrapped bricks down there on that bottom shelf. And, starting there is a good place to start. But as you build out your studio, you should have tools that make you happy.
All right, great. I'm going to turn
The
off the
adhesive,
recording.
Diane asks me, Goody, Gudy, is that adhesive. It comes in a roll.
Great.